Welcome back to my channel, you guys. It's Veronica, aka the Millennial Empath, and today I have Lunar Vibras on Instagram, my dear friend Jenny. Welcome.
Hi.
So Jen is a spiritual therapist, focusing mainly on couples and family, right?
Yes, but I also do individual.
Individual. Okay. So we met at this women in business event here in New York City, and she, like, there was just something about her that I just felt really drawn to, and I didn't know how to approach her, and she actually ended up approaching me first, which was really cool. I was like, oh, thank God, because I'm socially awkward slightly, and yeah, we just started talking and like sharing our own spiritual experiences. Jen is also do you mind if I use the word psychic?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
I'm a psychic medium, and
Yeah.
I'm also a Reiki master. So I have a lot under my belt.
Okay. So I'm going to start asking you questions, but could you elaborate to people? Can you clarify what your gifts are?
Okay. So for me, psychic ability means that like I can pick up on certain things. Um I can kind of know and sometimes see things. Those are like my strongest gifts. Mediumship allows me to speak to the dead and past loved ones. Sometimes guides, whoever falls under your lineage. And so that's kind of like my thing.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. So, my first question to you is, as a spiritual therapist, how do you weave your intuitive abilities into your work? Or is that something that you do? Is that something that's allowed by the system?
So clinically it's not allowed. But I think anywhere we go, we always sprinkle a little bit of ourselves. So I think that, I mean, at least the feedback I've gotten through people is that I don't do therapy the way normal therapists do. And I take that as a compliment. And so far everyone has said that that's a compliment. um, but I just use a lot of my intuitive thoughts. If I feel like I'm picking up on something, I make sure to kind of in some way incorporate that, or maybe be like, I was thinking, where do you think this could be coming from? Like, I kind of change the wording around, and that's what kind of allows me to use my gifts. But outside of that, I do mentorship, and I do workshops and classes and intuitive readings on my own, where I can allow that space of me being able to use both spiritual and therapeutic techniques.
All right, thank you. So, I wanted to talk about one of the things that we discussed earlier, well, right before this year started, actually. In the beginning of the year, you mentioned that there was something like big that was going to happen. And given the time of this taping, we are kind of coming on I don't want to say like the end of this quarantine, because I still think it's
I
like,
still got a long way to go, but
yeah.
yeah.
But could you speak a little bit about the messages you've received since the
Since the
beginning of the
quarantine or since the beginning? Okay. Well, like I've said intuitively, I felt like a lot of the times that um I'm sorry, someone's trying to talk. That's why I'm like, they need to back up for a bit. Sometimes I've felt that something big was going to happen and something big was going to change everything. I've been saying this for about 2 years, and my friend reminded me about a month or so ago, was like, oh my God, like 2 years ago when we first met, you were talking about this during a meditation, how like some big shit was coming and that it was going to change everything as we know it. And I looked at you like you were crazy. And as per usual, that's what I get. A lot of people look at me like I'm a little crazy. And he's like, but you weren't crazy. You knew. And I was like, I knew to an extent, right? I had an idea that something big was coming because that's what I kept feeling, like something big was coming. But not in my wildest dreams would I have imagined that this shit happened. Okay. I knew it was going to be big. I knew it was going to change everything. I just did not know to the extent that I said it, even though I did say within myself, like it was going to be earth shattering, and change everything as we know it. So I thought that was pretty cool that I was able to pick that up. But I also know other intuitives that have actually told me that they've been feeling like some big shit was gonna go down, like you and some other people, like a few months previous to this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a timeline as specific as you. I even had a friend that was like that. She said since November of last year, she kept feeling like March is something big is gonna happen. March something big is gonna happen, and then that's when we got completely locked down. But I think that a lot of the times we just keep brushing off our intuitive thoughts, and we kind of take it off as like, oh, that's just a wandering thought. Oh, that's just this. Oh, that's just that. And I always say, like, trust yourself, because you sometimes know a little better than other people.
Okay, thank you. Yes, that is definitely true. And I feel like for the people who are like energetically sensitive, our intuition is like our biggest gift. Because it's such a great like truth detector, and like it's just a great indicator of when something feels off and when something doesn't feel off. And
Absolutely.
we really have to learn how to trust it more, especially now because of like so many veils are getting lifted from like just like how things have been running. It's
Mhm.
insane. So to follow up with that, uh from could you give any practical tips, from a therapeutic perspective, to those who may be experiencing high levels of anxiety about this? um
Mhm.
yeah.
So intuitively, I always tell people that, like, one thing that's really important is that take every day one day at a time. At this point, trying to predict the future, trying to control, because not everyone can predict.
No.
Control, though.
No.
People always try to control.
Yeah.
You cannot control anything, but you can work on what you can do today. One thing I always do is I make a list of things I want to do in the day. I don't get ridiculous with the list. I know some people that do, they put like 50 things. You can't get 50 things done in one day. However, if you do 7 and you end up doing all 7, amazing. But I also think be realistic with the timeline. Don't push yourself if you can't get the whole entire list done, but it allows you to see how productive you've been. And it allows a little bit more of a relief of feeling like you're not doing something. That's the first thing. The second thing is also giving yourself the space to not do something. It's okay if you can't and if you don't feel up for it. Everyone's going to have bad days, even if we're stuck at home. And I think some people forget that. Some people are very unkind to themselves and they beat themselves up when they don't get things done. And sometimes, honestly, resting is getting something done because you're allowing the space for creativity to blossom. If your brain is constantly running, how are you supposed to be creative? It's just not going to happen. So I think pacing yourself, taking your time, understanding what production looks like to you and productivity allows for the space for you to kind of ease some of those anxieties. And obviously always go get help if you feel overwhelmed and you feel like you can't handle all those emotions at the same time.
Thank you. I know you have Instagram posts that talk about that. It kind of sounds like what you're suggesting is also like putting a schedule together, but not being so religiously like religious about the schedule, to get everything done. The other thing that I've heard you talk about on your Instagram is having boundaries. Can you speak a little about how you've been able to practice slash maintain both during this time? And can you give advice to people who may have a really hard time maintaining boundaries because of the fact that they may live with other people that are like family and not roommates,
Yeah.
or the living space is like really small.
Right. And that they don't have the space. So I'm a big believer in speaking your boundaries, something as simple as like, I need a minute right now is important. If you can't get away from people, going into the bathroom is one of them. Taking a walk is the other. Offering to go get groceries if you can. You know what I mean? If you're a teenager and you can't, put on your headphones. Ain't nobody gonna bother you if they know that you have your headphones on, right? So if that's what you need, do that. I also think just vocalizing, like, the needing of the space. If, for example, let's say you live in a studio, I always say the bathroom, and then someone stays there, you can swatch. Um, if you have more than like a studio, let's say a 1 bedroom, one in the living room, the other one in the bedroom, the other one in the bathroom, you guys can rotate. I've seen people do it. I mean, at this point, we can't really go out, so you got to do with what you got. If you can and you have the opportunity, like a backyard, go out in your backyard. If you have a front yard, go out in your front yard, but just allow yourself a little bit of space. I think that that's very important. So that's the first part. Second part is, I just think being very communicative and being open and honest with people. You're not responsible for other people's emotions, but you're responsible for yourself. So if you don't feel good and you feel overwhelmed about a situation, I think expressing that in a way that is effective to you will allow another person to understand. However, you're not going to come off as an asshole. You're not going to be like, oh, fuck off. Right? No, but you could be like, listen, I'm very overwhelmed right now. I need a minute. I need a minute to pick up my thoughts. I don't want to say anything that might be rude, or I don't want to talk right now. So it's something that doesn't have to be a big explanation. Just say, I don't want to talk right now. And if they don't respect your boundaries, then that's them not respecting your boundaries. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Versus the opposite of that, which is like, they're getting upset because you're saying, I don't want to talk right now. You can't take responsibility for them being upset about that. You have a right to your own feelings. You have a right to own your own space, and no one should feel the right that it's okay for them to invade that space, because if they do, the person who has problems with the boundaries is them, not you.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Thank you. Um, so my next question to you is, for those of us who are energetically sensitive and intuitive, this can be an especially trying time right now, just because of like the uncertainty. Now I feel like stuff is starting to settle a little bit because the weather's getting warmer and people are starting to go out a little bit more, which trying to be mindful and careful about that still. But I myself am finding this is a time when my intuition is both ebbing and flowing. So what I mean by that is there's times when I feel really connected to it, and then there are times where I kind of feel like I don't feel connected to it as much. um, have you experienced the same thing, or not, and is there any advice you could give to people who might be in the same like situation?
I think that during this time frame, one, I think your health is number one. So I always encourage people to just kind of try to remain as much as you can on the inside. If you can, go take a walk. I'm a big advocate for walking. So I think just taking a walk around the block is okay. I don't suggest you going to a beach. I don't suggest you going to a pool at all.
If you go to the
I
park, be
understand.
careful.
Yes, go to the park, be careful. I understand the emotions. Like, as you were talking, I was just daydreaming for a quick second of what my life would be like without a beach and without a pool. And I was like, damn, this is hard. But I also know the earth is healing. We've seen an incredible amount in such a short period of time of how much the earth is healing. And all it's been is a matter of weeks. We've fixed things that have been fucked up for years in weeks. What could we do if we all stuck together and did a better thing for the world? I think the earth would heal, and population and extinct Extincting, I cannot pronounce
Extinction.
that. Yes, thank you. Sometimes my accent come out and then I don't know how to talk. But that can get rid of. Like, there's a lot of things that could happen if we actually got together and did the right thing. But we're trying, we're doing the best we can. The earth is healing while we're trying to take care of ourselves. And I think that just remembering to change your perspective, and like that's like one of the biggest things that I talk a lot about in therapy, is changing your perspective and how you view something, because how you view something is how you internalize it. So if I'm continuously seeing it as I'm stuck, then I'm feeling stuck, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling angry. However, if I change my perspective and say I'm being careful, I'm taking care of myself, that feels less harsh to the body. It's like, you know what, you are taking care of yourself, you're doing the best thing for you. And that changes the perception and the internalization of the emotions and the energy, essentially.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that I really liked what you said about like how you perceive it is how you internalize it. Like I never thought of that. I don't know why.
Yeah, trust me, I work a lot with trauma, and that's what I try to do when we're going through the traumatic events, is just trying to perceive it from a different point of view, and not giving the event the power that it holds to take advantage of you, but rather giving yourself an empowerment to see it that you overcame it, rather than being the victim of the trauma.
Okay. Thanks. That's really powerful. Okay, so coronavirus aside for now. So you are a couples and families therapist, and you also work with individuals. Um, before, I mean, on for a while now on Instagram, I've been seeing a lot of descriptions slash like reasonings why empathic people, like highly sensitive people, emotionally intelligent, open-hearted people, empaths basically, attract others who are narcissistic. What kind of reality you want to set for yourself and contribute to, because that's also like
Yep, because you create your reality.
okay. So, um, oh, here's another one. Would you say, from your perspective as a therapist who works with relationships, that the term narcissistic has been overused slash trendy? I ask because, as in the previous question, it seems like to me that it's a consistent descriptor people use against someone when a relationship hasn't worked out. And I kind of feel like not every person that you break up with is a narcissist or is like super
I
toxic.
do. I do agree with you. I think everything's overused, just like every other thing in the world. When you find a new word and you want to empower yourself, you're going to use it in a negative way. You don't always use it in a positive way, and that's unfortunate. I do believe that maybe there's a lot more openness to mental health. So people just are slapping names like, oh, I'm just bipolar. But are you bipolar?
Yeah, I feel like that's a specific thing. Like,
Yeah, but like I've heard a lot of people misuse the word bipolar all the time. Oh, I'm
okay.
just bipolar. Like, yeah, that's just, I just switch my moods. Like, that's just, no, you're just being a bitch. Like, there's a difference. Um, and then sometimes it's like, oh, he was so narcissistic. Maybe he just had trauma he didn't work through
Mm-hmm.
and made him come off as narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe he didn't like you and you kept forcing him. Or maybe she didn't like you and you kept, forcing her. Like, and one thing I do want to take away, at least in this meeting, is that like there's a lot of pressure on like listening to everything that women say, but not understanding that I always say, regardless of gender, we are all one and the same. We all deal with the same heartbreaks. We all deal with the same pain. We all deal with the same understanding of joy and happiness and excitement, passion, being driven. And I think that sometimes we allow gender to be the thing that separates, understanding that we all have feelings and we all feel those feelings. Does that make sense?
It does. I do
And
have I
go
do
ahead.
have I have a question. So for people who might say, well, okay, yeah, but I think the thing that kind of sticks in at least most women's craw is that these men have so many more privileges, and in, including skin tone, like the lighter they are, the more privilege you have, right? Because that's just the society that we live in.
Yeah.
Um, I, I, I guess my question is, what would you say to someone who, I understand that, but they have more privileges and are able to, because of those privileges, kind of have an easier time like finding resources, speaking up, controlling things because of the patriarchy.
Yes.
You know?
So I do understand, to an extent I do agree, but that doesn't mean that we can generalize the way they generalize us.
Mm,
Why are we doing to them what they did to us? Then we are no better than them.
mm,
We're supposed to be the leaders of tomorrow. And instead, we become the thing that we hate the most. Because if you're constantly, I go back to the story that as old as this earth is, where does a man come from?
a woman.
That's all I have to say.
This also, it kind of opens up a different conversation as well, because I was on Instagram earlier today, and this writer slash activist artist that I follow, basically he was saying that if we're going to create like equality across the board within like the LGBTQIA community, like basically the power structures that are already in place, like we kind of have to like figure out new power structures so that we don't continue to like kind of do what we've been doing, if that makes sense. So it's like kind of we have to like really start from the ground up, which is what I kind of feel like this experience of like the pandemic is. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I say that all the time. We do have to start from the ground up, but you can't expect a man to do better when you didn't teach him better. And when I say you, I mean women who have sons.
Mm,
If you can't teach your son how to be a good man, and then you coddle him, you spoil him, you do all of these things, you tell him don't do this and don't do that, then how are you expecting him to grow into a good man when you didn't give him the skill set to do so? And then you tell him he can't be emotional, so then he doesn't be emotional. So then you tell him, oh, he needs his father. And yes, and he does. Every child should have both parents in any form of parent that you are. But then they think there's something is missing when you tell them that something is missing, and they don't feel whole. I think any child of any gender, of any kind, of whatever they want to be, if they want to be a fucking unicorn, you got to teach your children how to feel whole without anything that is division of gender. So again, I go back to, for me, it's genderless because it becomes, if you're a human being, you feel joy. If you're a human being, you understand excitement, passion, love, compassion, pain, anger. You feel all of these things. And if you can connect with someone on a human level, you already have them to some degree understanding you, and you understand them. And I think that that's the important part about us being sensitive people and us being energetically open, is that we can connect to an emotion, which allows us to connect to the person, which allows us to see the person, whether it is in visions, whether it is in your heart or your knowing, however your senses give you messages, because you're able to connect to that person. You know what I mean? And so I think that it has to be less about a division, and it has to be more about understanding a person, understanding what that person's trauma has gone through, and just letting go of the stigma, and not saying, oh, I hate men, I hate men, I hate men, I hate men, and then expecting there to be a good man. How? When you're consistently talking them down the same way they talked you down. So who's winning? No one. And so to me, that doesn't make sense. So I treat everybody like a human being. I just say human being. I'm human. You human. I'm a human. Other people are human.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
That was a really deep rant. I liked it. Thank you for that.
No.
Um, so as a spiritualist who has intuitive gifts, if you can, could you explain what you see energetically when a sensitive person is in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic or toxic, or I guess just not really feeling, sorry,
What
what?
do you when you say what do I see? Because you mean in my mind's eye, or do you
Yeah,
mean
in
like,
your mind's eye.
one example could be that when I saw this girl and her man, I saw claws. Like nasty claws, like holding on and grabbing onto her, and that shit grossed me out. And I was like, ew, ew, ew. And I intuitively was like, no, tell him not to ever touch you. Fucking throw holy water if you need to. Because I didn't know what that meant. I understood later on. But I just didn't understand what that meant. But I think that everyone gets their gifts given to them in a different way. Everyone gets their intuitive thoughts given to them in a different way. So I think that when I do see that, to my best ability, I try to give them the tools that is necessary in order for them to like try to break away from that. But again, I can't make choices for anybody. It was something, for example, something I said to a friend the other day. I was like, a mí no me importa, I'm going to say in Spanish and in English, a mí no me importa si tú te quieres acostar con ese maldito tipo, o sea, eso es tu problema. Yo no me acuesto con él. Yo no tengo que vivir con eso. Es tú que tienes que vivir con eso. And so I will say it in English. I don't give a fuck who you sleep with or what you do in your bedroom. Because you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not the one waking up having nightmares over that. That's you. You got to live with your own choices and you got to lay in it. So I don't really care. People are like, oh, yeah, I feel like you're going to judge me. Oh, I don't judge nobody, honey. You do whatever you want. You do whatever you want. You know, go you. But you're the one that got to come back and redo your life if you can't learn the first time. Not me. Not my problem. I'm going to sit with my feet. That's me all the time. Like, you know, like I even told one of my friends, I'm like, yo, I don't really like your man. I think he's an asshole. But I mean, you're the one that sleeps with him, not me. I don't really give a fuck what you do. And then she's like, I just thought you would be judgmental. I was like, no, why? I was like, that's not like as long as he doesn't fuck with me, I'm okay. Like at the end of the day,